Piotr, I thought your presentation was so interesting because it is very provocative, is very cross-sectional in problem and solution spaces. It is just like a very fertile ground to sprout all sorts of interesting things. I thought it was super interesting. And it resembles some of the work that some people at the Bartlett has been doing, namely Professor Sean Hanna, with the caving of wood and understanding how to acquire, like how to capture some very human features and somehow embed this in the AI and then bring it back into the interaction process, that loop of human-computer interaction with AI. But my question is, did you have a follow-up with the people going through the experiments? Because it seems there is an element of cognitive behavior change, or I'm not going to call it cognitive behavior therapy. I don't think it's a therapy, but there's a cognitive behavior effect because people need to deal with what you call this nonsense thing going on, and actors had to adapt and adjust. Did they give you any long-term insights on long-term behavior? Did they learn or something new or make new connections on how to act, how to improvise, etc.?
Yes, thank you. This is a very good point. So actually, I have different behaviors that I noticed in the improv comedy work, where some members in the troupe have been there since 2018. Went through multiple cycles of chatbots, starting from a recurrent neural network and now GPT-4. And so that means that they saw the technology evolve and they developed strategies to adapt and to use it. And what's interesting actually is when they come up with the strategies to use it by themselves, simply by virtue of experimenting with it. And I can contrast that with the work I did on Dramatron at DeepMind, where we had writers participating in only one session, a two-hour session, with the exception of one writer who actually did write the full plays using Dramatron, and then the following summer, last summer, did write a new batch of full plays to stage again. So in their case, they were essentially in this process of exploration and judgment rather than exploitation of what's available. And that indeed does create a different modality of interaction. I believe the best interaction you can get from those models is when you have a very specific target, and then you allow to play a little bit with a model and find maybe something halfway between what you intended to do at the beginning and what the model can actually offer.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so that was my main question. Of course, Tassos, I have lots of questions as well.
I'll drop one. Like I said, my question is going to be for Andrew, but it's something for Piotr. I was expecting a different kind of presentation to the beginning, to be honest, from you, because of a personal. I've seen your work with movement and stuff, so I was expecting something towards kind of movement. But that's something that I would like to ask you a couple of things at some point offline, maybe of this thing. So for Andrew, I assume you're an architect. You're a trained architect.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So, or you have something to do, let's say, with architecture. So, I mean, I understand the concept, I think, and the way that you worked, and I think the results are really nice. I had a question. I was listening to your conversation, your presentation. I wasn't sure whether the idea of the kind of the morphology and the way that we built buildings, through kind of a network of different kind of spaces that they link together in a particular order, the morphology that we are trained to in the synthesis or architectural design, as we call it in the undergrad years, right? Was that encoded in your this text-based thing? What was your feeling in the end? I saw some, but I'm not sure. You've seen most of the results, and maybe the bad results, not the good results. And my question always, I mean, we all have done, you know, kind of an analysis of the bad results sometimes in order to get, you know, the real feeling. That's kind of, yeah, that's one point. And the second point would be whether in architecture is the three-dimensionality is important, and not three-dimensionality in terms of the 3D model, is the elevation, the idea of moving around in a house, in a space, the overlooking, double height, you know, different kinds of visibility and accessibility paradoxes maybe as well, that are hard to teach or encode based on this. So would you think that a different, like a graph-based representation or something else that encodes this kind of idea that you can have things above each other, near each other, but not accessible, some of them accessible, maybe atria with kind of overlooking views and things like that can be encoded, maybe? Is that my two?
Yeah.
It's about morphology then, my question, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very interesting questions, and they're definitely things that did come up, because there is a kind of bluntness to the process where it's sort of, you know, there's either this space or there isn't the space, as opposed to kind of a variation and a quality of the space that is important in architecture for sure. I mean, I think it would be really interesting, you know, to integrate a kind of graph approach, you know, to test how that would actually look like. You know, there was a kind of consideration for testing that out separately to see how that would actually play out. It sort of the challenges are kind of logistical, I guess, with it. But it would be really interesting to actually, you know, capture more of a kind of quality aspect of it, as opposed to, you know, there's either this room or a wall or this. And, you know, part of the challenge as well is that, you know, it kind of works sequentially. So once something gets created early on, it never really is able to re-update that part of the design. It's kind of, it commits to it and then it's done. So it kind of runs top to bottom, right? So I think, you know, having a kind of feedback loop in it would be interesting, and I think would be able to capture some of that kind of morphology that plays into, you know, capturing the quality of the designs themselves that exist in the data set. So I think it's a very interesting question. I'm curious to see how it would play out with a kind of graph model. That definitely is something that is on my mind. It's just, you know, how do you actually get it to work? But that would definitely be really interesting. Yeah.
Any other questions for our presenters, including myself? I don't know. Abel, you had something? It seems that you're...
No, mine was mainly, yeah, the follow-up of the behavior of people who experienced that experiment setup. I think, yeah, also in your presentation, Tassos, I thought it seems like when you said a space syntax 2.0, it seems very promising, because, you know, in my time in the space syntax lab with you, we had I was doing all sorts of things except space syntax and depth math modeling. I was doing all sorts of things, but it seemed that that foundation was unshakable. I just wonder if with those overlays, and it seems the space syntax is becoming more and more economical models, you see them moving away, or at least what is done in the office is moving away from the original
Correct.
foundation.
Yeah, maybe not, because yeah, of course, look, with the office, you go where the clients wants to go, and it's all about the economy, the scale, and how you build probably things. For us in the research lab, I think we are at this point, we're trying, and especially myself and others, most of you worked with all of us actually in these things. We're trying to find kind of interesting ways to encode certain aspects of space and space configuration and kind of the knowledge that you build as you move through space in ways that then we can sort of employ ML and deep learning, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's what I've coined as the space syntax 2.0, is kind of just as a provocative thing.
Yes.
Is a very, very simple kind of geometric way, again going back to the roots, because it started like 40 years ago, maybe a bit more than 40, by Bill, where he kind of described the space through kind of network theory and graph theory. And of course, the community had like a extremely good success in finding, theories and methodologies and correlations with the way that people perceive space, move space. It's now part of a lot of the cognitive sciences and kind of collaborations. And I think now we're at the point where, as you say, we're moving away from the core, which is the foundation of just the space and the geometry that we live in, right? And we are working more on kind of other methodologies on top of this foundation. So I wanted to kind of go back and rethink. Now, well, it used to be the case that we had like a very limited amount of computing to even compute the graphs. I mean, I don't remember when was the first London map done, 30 years ago, with code by Sip Dalton in Axman, I think. It took, I don't know, days probably to compute a very, very simple model. Now we've got the power, we've got the knowledge. So
yeah,
my presentation was about, looking ahead.
Right. The other question I have is, because you're looking at cognitive models and this session is about cognitions, I'm just wondering if there has been any new research between the Space Syntax Lab and UCL Neuroscience. So the work being done on vector cells, etc., natural human navigation, if this has been cross-fertilized. So a couple of years ago, Professor Kay Chaffrey presented here in the DCIO on how we humans navigate space and the natural neural networks used for that. So this is also work that UCL does with DeepMind. So I just wonder if this has informed any new techniques in the Space Syntax Lab.
You caught me off guard here. I'm not sure. I know that we've been working a lot with Hugo Spears and the Spears Lab. But I don't know any of the latest one. I can't tell you that I know any of the last couple of, whether there are papers the last couple of years coming out from collaborations. So honestly, I've got no idea of any of the latest stuff that we're doing. I haven't done any work with them. I've only done stuff with the non-human work I've done is more with biologists from the US working with ant colonies and the way that ant colonies, the location of the queens and how they kind of manipulate their own space and they keep their foods and stuff like that, which is a completely different thing. They don't see around. They've got other senses that they kind of, and different ways of moving. But that's a completely different story from mice, not rats and other experiments that the Spears Lab does. We did.
In the neurosciences, that they are definitely rats because they have bigger brains, so we need them. So that is interesting because in many ways one has confirmed the other over time. So what they've discovered in neuroscience to an extent has confirmed the work, the foundation work that has been developed in space syntax and has been modeled. But then, of course, now we can see more, we can compute more, and I just wonder what the next steps are. Yeah, it's an interesting problem. I don't think we have any short answer for that. So I think yeah.
I just wanted to add to that. So I will participated in the paper that we published in DeepMind on learning to navigate a vector-based navigation using grid-like representations in artificial agents. So we specifically try to have grid cell behavior emerge by training an agent to navigate using targets expressed in something like place cells, an equivalent of place cells in a neural network. Yes, it's something that we did manage to achieve at that time, and it was seen as a big landmark in applying AI to try to replicate some ideas that you observed in biology, and but at the same time, it is always we also need to be kind of critical of our own work and notice that it's always possible to observe embeddings of representations that can be enrolled in space. So there was this relatively controversial paper recently about the fact that language models have an embedding of space, which essentially is just rather an observation that you can that out of many dimensions in which the vectors store information in a language model, some could be projected into a two-dimensional manifold, but it's not necessarily something that emerges because of a behavior of a language model of some understanding of space. It just it emerges because of the way the data was clustered.
But isn't this in itself kind of biased by human users?
Yes, and so essentially, right, exactly. So it just captures the human user is the there's a conditional independence based on the human user who is basically using it in different ways in different areas, and so you can map it. Yes, I mean, yeah.
Yes. Tassos, any?
Cool.
You good? So I'm noting the time. We passed half an hour. Like we're supposed to finish at 3. It's 3:30 here in London. I just then, Tassos, if you think it's appropriate, I could go clockwise, just asking for final comments and observations from everyone online. Or if you want, you can run that. You can go clockwise.
No, you go on.
Yeah. So here on my screen, I have Ken Kong Wu. Any final thoughts?
No, I think many questions have already been discussed, and I think it's very interesting that the people, researchers all start to realize, there are, nowadays data is very different. We are not just using data, but data is generating data, becoming kind of like a very different thing, right, to me. So that's why I think I was wondering, like, if, and especially if we just talk about human bias, do you think the things, everything that's shared online themselves as a whole has bias, or is there any chance that every individual can negotiate between your own purpose and also, right, as a designer, right, you have your own goals to achieve, but also all the examples, they somehow, in whatever sense, right, can already give us bias, in a way.
Yeah, that's a point of view. Okay, next one on my screen, Tassos. Any?
Well, exactly. Any final comments?
Or what's next?
To be honest, it was very interesting for me. My comment is going to be kind of a personal one, that I learned a couple of things that I didn't know and I want to explore. So I want to go back and Google a couple of things that I heard. And that's actually top quality for me. It's if you get something back and then you go and Google it and you extend the kind of the area of my kind of very, very limited knowledge that I've got now, in that lab and in this school, I think that's a win for me. And thanks to the presenters for this. And the morning, a couple of the morning guys that I didn't speak, you know.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Okay, next one is Andrew. Yeah, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean,
the next plans.
Well, the presentation is really interesting. I think it's great to see. I think, I definitely did have some ideas as the presenters were going. I'm like, oh, I could, this could be an interesting trajectory to kind of make a move towards. It is great to see that there is a kind of push for capturing kind of nuance in a lot of these models, in a lot of these kind of AI models. I think this is sort of moving away from the kind of bluntness of, kind of historically how architecture has dealt with AI, and just kind of trying to capture quality and kind of encode all this different information in it that I think is really fascinating. So, I'm curious to see, how this work continues to evolve in the future. And yeah, thanks to the presenters. It was really all really interesting presentations.
Yeah, thank you. George, final
Yes,
thoughts.
Final thoughts. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for allowing me into this forum, which is on design and architecture, and I was coming with a slightly different perspective of design in theater and design for performance. Yeah, I really so I really love all the talks, and I love also the some of the themes sometimes were mentioned of this participatory design. And that's something that's apparent anytime you build something, but there are people going to work in that space, and you use them in their own ways, and discover new usages. And so I think that theme can be transported to any kind of technology where the user just plays with it and discovers new usages.
Yes, absolutely. We have a few more people online. We have Professor Chris Long and also Dr. Carlo Galera. I don't know if you want to mention something, and also Marta is online. I don't know if you want to mention, ask any final questions or make final comments.
I don't have any final questions, so just a comment to say that all the presentations were really fascinating, and it's really great to see all the different levels of interaction with these technologies within the industry. If you ever speak with most of our colleagues in the architectural industry, all you listen about is Gen AI in relation to Midjourney and DALL-E and applications of the sort, and it just takes to kind of sit here for a couple of hours to see the vast potential that these sort of technologies have in so many other areas that can expand our vision about what architecture can be. So I would just like to say that was fabulous to see that very rich level of presentations. Thank you so much, Abu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your support. Yeah, Carlos and Chris.
Thank you, Abel, and thank you to all the presenters for such amazing presentation and the knowledge that you share. I really enjoyed. And maybe a short question, and is connected with what Piotr was presenting. For me, it's very interesting, this concept of co-creativity with AI. I think it has a lot of potential in many different fields. And I would like to ask him maybe what were the lessons learned in that process, if any. I mean, or what were the challenges when you try to integrate AI in the creative process and interacting with human, with the way we like to create things?
Yeah, so actually the choice of the word co-creativity is very political, because it assumes that it attributes some agency to the AI, which of course it doesn't have. So it's when we say co-creativity, we say much more than using it as a tool. But this is because we are on the stage of theater and we are making things up, and we have permission from the audience and from ourselves to make things up. That's literally what people expect anytime when dealing with cultural artifacts, with storytelling. And so we anthropomorphize the robot that helps us to anthropomorphize the robot. To actually, we need that to be able to rebound on it and be inspired. And we essentially add a layer of interpretation to anything it does. So this co-creativity, I think, is allowing oneself to work with something, or at least somebody else, normally co-creating with someone else that has a mind of their own, and that might contradict you and have different ideas, and so you need to resolve those divergences. Yeah, so that's the interesting. So
Yeah.
that's the interesting aspect of co-creativity.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Chris?
Thank you very much for all of the amazing presentations. I suppose just one comment, that in such a fast-moving territory, it's really interesting to see that while things like the chair example show the AI process has no idea what it's doing, it's representing a 2D profile for something that's clearly a three-dimensional form, and it doesn't seem to bother anyone or matter, and it's no barrier to the creative opportunities and finding solutions that you might never have thought of. That if you want to call it co-creation, we're just seeing lots of options that you might just, if you sat there with a pen, would never reach. You just wonder that, given that it is moving so fast, how soon will it be before those solutions are exploring a solid geometry? They're a three-dimensional multi-camera view of a volume and extracting geometries from it. And where will that go?
We'll certainly not be designing chairs, or if we will be for maybe different reasons or different agenda. Yeah, it's very. We can see that, yeah, the landscape is changing, the professional landscape is changing quite dramatically. Okay, and I think this is it, unless somebody else wants to comment on anything. I think we can, Tassos, if you like, we can call the day, and we will be back tomorrow at, let me just see, tomorrow we'll be starting the day at 10 o'clock, and we have Professor Lan Shiradia from Hong Kong University giving an opening keynote. And we will have Professor Neil Thompson from UCL talking about integrated enterprise delivery for larger scale projects. So we'll have the sessions of cultures, which include management science as well, and our final session on design computation applications, industrial applications, that is. So yeah, I look forward to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for participating. If you did record your presentations, please, if you did not do so, send me the link, because I will use this for the final version for the video channel. And yes, and remember that we'll carry on, for those who opt in, we'll carry on collaborating for producing the book for next year. So yeah, thank you so much, and then I'll see you tomorrow.